and gentlemen, for coming. From time to time, periodically, we just like to update Bermuda on our thoughts of current events, particularly as it relates to the economy. I'm standing here with Senator Jeanne Atherden. She speaks for Finance in the Senate, and I'd like to address a number of issues that relate to some of the events that have happened in the last week, and some more general things. Government officials will have Bermudians believe that all Bermuda's economic ills are a result of the global recession. The same recession that they failed to anticipate and they failed to adjust to. Now everything is laid at the feet of the Great Recession. The truth is far different. Last week's Auditor General's report on the TCD building highlights a graphic and, quite frankly, outrageous example of how government's own actions have contributed to the current poor economic performance and conditions in Bermuda. Now, Bermudians have sometimes failed to connect the dots between government cronyism and waste and their own personal pocketbooks. Many Bermudians considered their own personal finances separate from those of the government, and that public stewardship had nothing to do with them. Government's piggy bank and theirs were totally unrelated. However, the payroll tax increase earlier this year exploded that myth. More people now realize that government's piggy bank is theirs. The swelling of the public debt is another indicator lumbering Bermudians and their children with a greater burden to repay in the future. The conduct of government with overrun projects like Barclay, like Dockyard, like TCD, has a direct bearing on whether government has to raise taxes or borrow more money or pay more interest. This government's handling of capital projects has resulted in, conservatively speaking, over $70 million of overspend, much of it under dubious circumstances. Now that's over 2/3 the value of this year's tax increase. That's why it is critical that the government live within its means, freeze the size of the civil service, allowing it to reduce by attrition, cut consultants and excessive spending, and for capital projects to strictly abide by already existing procurement rules that are there to ensure fairness, transparency, and value for money, so that tens of millions do not disappear, millions that eventually taxpayers have to pay. So Bermudians must connect the dots. Now, my conversations with many Bermudians, in my conversations, I've been told that they're very concerned about the rise of the national debt, which surely at this point in time must exceed $1 billion. The only person not worried about it appears to be the Minister of Finance. The minister says that compared to other countries, our debt service to GDP is still quite low. Now, to refute this argument, let me illustrate by using an example, or perhaps you might call it a metaphor. Now, take a B-52 bomber. It's a large plane, and it's designed to fly into high-risk situations. It has 8 engines. So if 1 or 2 or even 3 fail, that plane can still fly. But if you're flying a single-engine small Cessna, you have to avoid risky situations. Because if your one engine fails, you're going down. So it is with the Bermuda economy. Large, diversified economies can afford greater risk, the greater risk of high debt, because if one or two or three of their economic drivers fail, their economies will still stay aloft. But in single-engine Bermuda, we have to avoid the risks that larger countries can take, because our one engine, if our one engine stalls, we are going down. That single engine is international business. But the government still acts like it doesn't realize it. If you had a single engine Cessna, wouldn't you make sure that that one engine was working as well as possible? Wouldn't you make sure that the fuel was pure as it could be? That the oil was clean? That the spark plugs were perfect? Of course you would. But this government continues to treat international business like a pariah instead of a partner. That's like allowing water to mix into the fuel of your Cessna, and that could have disastrous results. That's the effect of government's term limit policy. It's a policy that affects directly our sole economic engine. And it's like getting water into the fuel of that engine. Also, one of the reasons international business became so successful here is because there was a working partnership with the government. A partnership that these companies couldn't get in most other jurisdictions of the world. And there was always consultation between international business and government. February's tax increase completely blindsided international business and has further weakened the relationship between international business and government. We can't afford to do that with our sole economic driver. Government's policy just defies common sense. No wonder we're witnessing moving of headquarters of these companies to other lands, outsourcing of back office functions abroad. These moves reduce the potential for jobs for Bermudians. And speaking of jobs, we are witnessing our highest unemployment rate since World War II. We're not set up. We don't have a government apparatus that's set up to measure unemployment correctly. But whatever figure you've heard, it's been understated, in my opinion. In the U.S., they measure out-of-work people looking for jobs as a percentage of the total workforce. And that workforce includes U.S. citizens and non-U.S. citizens, guest workers. In Bermuda, we only talk about the percentage of Bermudians out of work. Now, what if we took the amount of jobs lost, including expatriate workers, whom we have sent home? The unemployment rate would be staggering. If we did it that way, we'd be measuring unemployment on the same basis as most other countries on planet Earth. And the reason that, and one of the many reasons that the retail sector keeps slumping is because there are just fewer people on Bermuda than there used to be. That's one of the explanations. So, in conclusion, our current employment situation is a direct result of mishandling of the economy by this government, and no amount of double talk, particularly the double talk that we've had in the last few days, can change that fact.